fingers crossed, that is going. Okay, got it. Right, that is my responsibility. Avril said to me, make sure that you press record. So hi everybody. If you're happy to kind of unmute yourselves, what we normally do first thing, and everyone's on mute at the moment, is just kind of chat in general about what's going on around our stores. So if anybody does want to contribute anything, that's always good. So I guess from my point of view, obviously it's pretty warm out there. So I have to confess we've had a fairly in fact, very topical tonight because the presentation we're going to be talking about menopause, but the presentation is called Hot Under the Collar, so that's actually very topical. So we've had a pretty quiet couple of weeks. Well, no, week or so really. We've had holidays and then we've got the hot weather. How's everyone else finding things? Are you okay? How are you getting on? Oh no, lit up but frozen. Can you hear me, Justina?
Okay, I'm not Justina. I'm one of her team. My name is Diana.
Hi Diana. And, sorry, so I've now put you on the spot.
And I'm one of Justina's team. You can see Justina, I think, another one just down there on my screen. There's another one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can have.
Oh, and there she is.
How's things going with you anyway?
I don't know what to say really. That's the first time I join a meeting like this, and
so we've just
I just totally would like to listen and to follow, and I might contribute when I feel like I can or I want to.
No problem.
That's okay.
Don't need to contribute at all. So just in terms of just saying that we're fairly quiet, but the one thing we've seen a lot of, which you probably all have, is hay fever and hay fever remedies. It was obviously on the news last night that the incidences of hay fever are going up an awful lot, and there seem to be various reasons for that. There is actually something attributing it potentially to global warming and particularly the heat over the last couple of weeks. So that's been really quite interesting. So we've got a hay fever display going on and trying to sort of educate customers around that. Also been doing a sun cream promotion, and quite good timing, we did a buy-in to Green People, so we got 20% off the Green People sun cream, so we've got that on promotion. So those kind of things are sort of helping for us. And then on to this evening, the main thing we're going to be talking about is menopause. So interestingly with menopause, again, contribute if anyone's got any thoughts. I was kind of thinking about sort of menopause and our trade with regards to menopause a little bit earlier on before doing this session. And we probably hit a peak with our sort of menopause sales in around about September last year. And we'd had all the kind of Davina thing, menopause was getting talked about an awful lot more. People were coming in, they were ready to talk about it. I think since then, things have slowed down a little bit. And I think that's partly because what we're finding now is the doctors and the GPs are now a little bit more informed, and there's more availability for HRT. So I think sometimes people are having that thought, okay, well, let's go down the HRT route, and therefore I don't need the natural remedies in the same way. So one of the things we've been trying to do is get our customers to understand that there's lots of things happen in life at sort of late 40s, 50s. So not everything can always be put down to hormone changes. There's lots of different reasons why you can be tired. There's lots of stress going on at that time in life. So we're sort of trying to work with the fact that yes, there's more availability of HRT. First of all, it's not the right choice for everybody. But also let's look at what's happening with you. Let's look at how we can support sleep. Let's look at some of those things alongside potentially them going to their doctors as well. So I think the main thing is it doesn't have to be that kind of either or. And I've been doing quite a lot of talks on menopause, and actually been fortunate enough to work with 2 local GPs, and we've been doing some workshops that kind of cover both sides of it. So that's all been working quite well. So hopefully that's a little bit of an insight as to what we're doing here at Amaranth, but I know it's definitely a subject that we can always learn a lot about. Anyone else got any, I keep putting everybody on the spot, but anyone else got any thoughts around what's happening in their stores, or any comments around that? And again, I can't see anyone, so just literally looking at
oh, sorry, Alison.
Okay.
Hi, Cheryl.
Yeah, you know, we've been busy, but we extended our kitchen, so we've put in actual breakfasts and lunches now. So we've had quite a lot of interest in that. But I've got some. Is it too early to talk about questions on the menopause? Are you are we just talking about general sales at the moment?
Yeah, no, we can talk about menopause. I mean, what we're going to do.
You've gone all sticky there.
Yeah,
the question I've got is about HRT itself, because again, the same thing for us. We had a huge surge on menopause last year, and it seems to have gone a bit because all the availability of HRT seems to be back in, and there's some local people who are quite evangelistic about it.
On menopause, get whatever they want out of it. So please do questions, comments.
Oh, I'm so sorry, talking over you. But the question I've got is, are there supplements or advice that we can give to customers that is in parallel to HRT, so it will minimise the side effects of HRT or maximise the benefits of HRT, rather than just saying it's either or? I liked what you said. It's not either or. It's sometimes it's both. And obviously you can't take herbal remedies, I wouldn't have thought, alongside HRT, but there must be some extra advice that we can get that gives a benefit to the store too. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and
there are actually there's quite a few things that you can run parallel. And the other interesting thing, just from our experience on the helpline, is a lot of women did definitely dive in with the HRT when they were told, oh, it's safe and and forget all your fears. And it's good for everyone, whatever your situation, even if you've got the merino coil in, which is bizarre anyway. But we have noticed now quite a few women coming back going, well, I tried that and that was hellish. You know, we did not enjoy that at all. It didn't work for me. Or they'll come in and they'll say, still got these symptoms, you know, maybe it's helped a bit with this, but all of these things are still a problem. And I think it's true what you're saying, you know, you can't necessarily, although there are lots of things that the menopausal transition time will throw up, not all of them are going to necessarily be just hormonal. They can, the hormonal imbalance can exaggerate things that were already there. So, you know, anything that you were struggling with previously is going to be exacerbated. So it's very, very valuable to be giving the extra advice. The doctors don't have time to do that, even if they knew what to say.
Yeah. Alison, can you say what you said about the coil? That's contraceptive coil. Is that what you mean? So somebody I know, I think Joanna knows her, but Jo knows her. But she's had a coil fitted. She's got a uterus that's in a strange shape, so they can't get the coil back out. But they've put her on HRT, and she's having all sorts of problems. What's actually happening there? What in terms of hormones? What's actually happening?
Okay, so the merino coil is releasing progesterone. You tend to be told it's just localized and it's just going to affect, you know, around, but that, which makes no sense at all when you consider that you've got a circulatory system, and obviously, you know, something that's released in one part of the body really is very unlikely to stay there. So you are raising the ratio of progesterone to estrogen. And that's why if you have the merino coil in for a while, you can get a longer phases between your periods. You know, your cycle can lengthen, it can lighten, which obviously is good for a lot of women. But interestingly, that can then mimic perimenopause. So it can be very difficult when you get someone in your shop saying, where am I in my menopause? And if they're on a progesterone-only contraceptive, or they've got the merino coil, your guess is as good as mine, because they can be looking menopausal in their 20s, and it can just be because they've had the progesterone influence for a while. And as I say, in ratio, the estrogen is lower. so the problem is that doesn't seem to be acknowledged at all. If someone just goes to their GP, or even some gynecologists. I have to say, I've got some clients who, I'm a practitioner, I'm a nutritional practitioner. I've got some clients who have gone to a gynecologist and they haven't assessed the fact that they've got the coil, and they've just put them onto estrogenic HRT because they look like they've got low estrogen symptoms. But now you're just dealing with the extra progesterone. You know, you're just trying to balance that out. If you're using it as a contraceptive, now you're in big trouble, because it's no longer imbalancing the way it should for a contraceptive effect. And now you've got someone with 2 hormonal medications. And it's so common, Cheryl. It is so common. You see it all the time. It's bizarre. So, and also what you may well have noticed is that if you ask someone if they're a woman, if she's on any medication, she's unlikely to say she's got the Mirena coil because they don't see it as medication. But that is a hormonal medication.
So that's quite tricky as us as health stores to know kind of how to approach that, because obviously we can't say to people just go and stop doing that or blah blah blah. I guess the only thing we can do is suggest to people maybe go and have a chat with you.
Yes,
with you
information.
That's
it's
kind
information.
of where we are, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
giving them that information to get started with. You know, where do I start with this? It's like, well, you have got, if you've got the Mirena coil, not just the copper coil, because that's non-hormonal, but if you've got the Mirena coil in, then maybe just open that discussion with the GP so that you're at least drawing their attention to the fact that don't dump HRT on me until you've assessed the effect of the coil.
So shall I now formally introduce Alison in a very informal way, because I've done some like general chit chat, and then we can obviously keep coming back to questions at the end or whatever. So thank you very much for joining us. And Ali is from Vogel, and I know Vogel do so many things with regards to webinars, videos, etc. Around menopause. So you're going to take us through some training and information this evening, and I'm sure you don't mind if there's kind of questions and things as you go along. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Up to other questions at the end, if that's all right.
I mean, just jump in with questions if you've got them while I'm going through, but then we'll definitely have some time. Oh, yeah, I was just about to share my screen, Joe, and it's got host disabled participant screen sharing, so you might need to change that setting.
Okay, let me work out how to do that.
Or you can, if you've got the, I sent you the presentation, so we can always do it.
I've got the presentation, so I can always, I think there is I should be able to, let me just, I can make you the host now.
Okay.
So if I do it that way, because then at least you can control your, you can control, this is why I never do anything on a new computer, just use the old one for a long time. Right, I can see your screen now.
Yes, that's cool. I just need to, right, there. Is that okay for everyone? You see?
Perfect, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, super duper. So yeah, I absolutely love this topic. Absolutely love it. There's so much that you can do, so many ways that you can help women. Obviously, that's what we're here to do. So our founder, Alfred Vogel, he created A Vogel as a foundation towards the end of his life, and he really believed very, very strongly in the importance of providing lifestyle, dietary advice and information for people so that they could make healthy choices for themselves. So that is very much part of our mission, if you like, as a foundation. So, and this is a very, it can seem very tricky and overwhelming, I think, menopause, because there's so much noise and talk about it now. Previously it was sort of shrouded in mystery. Now there's almost a deluge of information, so it can be tricky. So I'm going to just go through some quite simple aspects of it, the easiest ways to start making a difference and helping your customers. So because there are loads and loads of different symptoms, but what you find is there are one or two symptoms that will cause or contribute to many other symptoms. So if you can get to those root ones, then you can actually make a big difference. So if we look at hot flushes, they can knock your confidence during the day. They're absolutely exhausting. In weather like this, it must be utterly unbearable, I would imagine. And night sweats, now these are even more interesting because they can not just cause fatigue, having to get up and change and cool yourself down in the night, but also they affect your ability to concentrate. They affect your mood, so they can make you very irritable because you've not had enough sleep. If you don't get proper sleep, then your pain sensitivity goes up, which is a real nasty one because you often get more aches and pains anyway during menopause, so then your sensitivity to that has increased, which is horrible. You will also get, we'll go into this in a little bit more detail later on, but you can get more carb cravings and therefore weight gain if you're not getting your proper sleep. So around 88% of menopausal women will experience hot flushes to one degree or another, and it's about just under 80% will get night sweats as well. So if you can get rid of, or at least reduce, these temperature issues, then a lot of the other symptoms are going to resolve, or at least lighten, and that's really going to help. Just a very quick point here on lifestyle stuff. The first thing to do with most symptoms, but definitely this one, is just check hydration. So I'm always checking that people are drinking enough water, plain still water, not sparkly water, because that's a classic one. People say, oh, I'm drinking plenty of water, and then it's not, or they count their cups of tea and coffee as water. So a litre and a half of still plain water a day is your absolute minimum in this weather, I would say. Definitely more. And often women don't realise how much fluid they're losing at night, especially if they're having night sweats. They don't realise that they're becoming dehydrated, and dehydration, as we'll see a bit later on, is causing so many other problems. So that's a very, very simple first step to get in there if someone's experiencing temperature dysregulation. So then, very simple remedy to be able to use is sage. This is such a lovely long-standing remedy. You know, sage has been around for a long time. Its Latin name, salvia, actually means to save. So its reputation has been established for a long time. And we definitely find that when women have had their sweats reduced or removed by sage, then they are definitely feeling that they've been saved. So historically used to control excessive sweating, not necessarily just menopausal, but any kind of excessive sweating. So, you know, this is something that you can use in this kind of weather for people who are experiencing sweats. We actually had a young lad once, a young brother of one of my colleagues, and he was having a problem with sweaty feet. He had sweaty feet, and it was impeding his progress in his courting, and so he started taking sage extract, and it sorted it out for him. So that was a happy outcome. Nothing to do with menopause. So when you look at, this is the background there, the green picture there is a close-up of the sage leaves, and they actually, you know, that sage leaves can look like they're sweating, and that's because the leaves contain loads and loads of tiny little oil sacs called trichomes, and those produce and store sage oil. And then when it's hot, that leaks out, and that can make the herb look like it's sweating. So that's where that sort of reputation came from. But actually, fantastic for hot flushes and night sweats. So loads of research on this. I've the references are all on the slides, underneath the slides, or I can send this research to you if you're interested. So all the research that I've referenced through here, I can send to you if you like. So this was an 8-week clinical trial on women who were menopausal, and they'd been experiencing at least 5 hot flushes a day at the beginning of the trial. So after 4 weeks, these were reduced by an average of 50%, and by the end of the 8-week trial by 64%. And they were continuing to decrease. So this is one where if you carry on taking it, then you don't plateau, you carry on. reducing the effect of the temperature dysregulation. So that was great. And then once this was done in 2000, published in 2011, and after that we were looking to do some more research. We do a lot of research at the A. Vogel Foundation because, again, that was part of the remit that was handed to us by Alfred Vogel, because he was incredibly nosy. We always wanted to know how things worked and, you know, how was the herb doing what it was doing. So we wanted to look not just at more research on hot flushes, but also we wanted to delve into how the herb was actually doing what it was doing. And in this research, which was published in 2019, we found that sage was binding to neurotransmitter receptors, such as the receptors for acetylcholine, and that is associated with calming the mind. And acetylcholine also plays a role in motivation, arousal, attention, learning, memory. So and very interestingly, it's also associated with helping to promote REM sleep, which is very important for making you feel competent. So experiencing your REM sleep means that you're more likely to feel competent the next day. So there are also neurological processes that it supports by attaching to receptor sites that are to do with temperature control, but also mood and cognition. So for menopausal women, it isn't now just the fact that it can help with temperature, but also it can have this secondary effect of improving cognition and supporting a calmer mood. This is really important because as a lot of women will already have experienced in their younger life, if they have PMS, when you're in that phase of hormones fluctuating, you're a lot more vulnerable to both emotional and mental kind of roller coaster symptoms. So things like mood swings and having problems with really feeling like you've got a grip on things, and feeling a little foggy in the brain. So if you think that that's just maybe a few days that you have that with PMS, in perimenopause, particularly when the hormones are jiggling all over the place, it can be a very predominant factor in your life and make you feel like, you just can't get a grip. So I was talking to a woman today, and she said she'd had to take time off work because she just didn't feel that she could cope. So yeah, it's a really interesting secondary action that sage has been found to have. Very important, we found that they took the fresh extract of the sage and then they dried it and did the same research with the dried sage, and it wasn't having as strong an effect. When you dry a herb, you lose a lot of the volatile ingredients, so that's not really that surprising, but it was interesting to see. So then we did a trial with real life women again, but this time we were looking at specifically at brainwaves as well as the temperature control. So they actually used EEGs through the trial, and yeah, I found that it was able to smooth out erratic brainwaves. So and they were actually measuring things like how well you're able to withstand mental challenges. So counting, reading, challenges like that, whilst at different stages of the trial whilst you were taking the sage. So calming the excitability of brainwaves, producing smoother, calmer patterning, so able to help women to feel that they were more mentally able to grapple with the tasks of the day, cognitive challenges, and they were more focused and relaxed. And what I really like about this is, one of the many things I like about sage, is that it's so simple to use. Tends to work quite quickly. It can have a very significant effect quite quickly, but you can take it for as long as you need. I tend to say take it until the symptoms have resolved, then stop. If they come back, then you can take it again. It's it works fairly quickly, so there's not a problem. You can take it alongside HRT. There's no issue with that because it's not estrogenic. Really, really good safety profile. No contraindications. You know, we're licensed, the menopause sage tablets are licensed, and we're not required to have any contraindications on the patient information leaflet, and the tablets are vegan as well. So yeah, it's so simple to work with, even if you've got, you know, relatively new staff who you know, are going to be struggling to learn everything so very quickly. This is a nice simple one to start with, because they don't have to worry too much about you know, asking lots of questions. Also with the licensed remedies, the ones that have got THR licenses, you've got the patient information leaflet, so it is actually the customer's responsibility to read that and check that everything is all right. You know, if they don't want to talk to you about all the various aspects of their situation, then they can read the patient information leaflet. That isn't actually your responsibility. At the end of the day, it is the customers. So again, for newer staff, that can be quite comforting. The other thing that we get asked all the time with Sage is about the Thujone. Thujone is one of the oils that it contains, but we control those really, really strongly. So again, there's the MHRA didn't require any warning about that, and they didn't limit the amount of time that you could take Sage for. So really easy.
Alison, may I ask you, please?
Yeah.
When you say it works really quickly, what do you mean by really quickly?
It does
Can you
depend
give me a
on
bit of a time
sure.
frame on that?
In the trials, because we've done several trials with you know, clinical trials on women with flushes, and you've definitely said in all the trials that we've done, you've seen a 50% reduction in the number and intensity of the flushes within the first 4 weeks.
Okay.
The measuring points tend to be every 4 weeks in 4-week blocks. So, but obviously they don't suddenly go down 50% week 4. They have been coming down before that.
Gradually, so, yes.
Yeah. So it's a good thing about this is that it's not something you have to, from the customer's point of view, they don't have to take it for 6 months to see if it's going to work. You know, if they've had absolutely no sign of anything resolving within the first month, then that's probably not going to work for them. They're probably going to need something estrogenic.
Yeah.
So I like that, because I think it's such a shame when people have to try something for a long time before they get able to see if it works.
Result. Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of things to flag up. For women under 40, you can start your menopause early. There are some particular some things that can, so being low in vitamin D, being obese, having thyroid issues, you can start menopause early. If it runs in the female side of your family, you can have an early menopause. But if I'm dealing with a woman who's under 40 and she's got sort of dramatic menopause symptoms, I do, you know, advise that they check for, you know, just to see with their doctor if anything else is happening. So, you know, whether their thyroid's gone wildly out of kilter, or you know, they've got some hideous deficiency, or maybe they've been on a hormonal contraceptive for a long time and that's interfering with it. There are lots of other things. So just under 40 years, I just tend to like to back that up with you know, the doctor actually diagnosing what's going on. Now, these tablets, because they're tablets, they have to have some excipients. So they do have sucrose laurate in them, which means that if you have a very rare intolerance to some sugars, then this may not agree with you. In that situation, you can use the tincture. We have got a tincture rather than a tablet of sage. I actually like using the tincture because you can do differential dosing. So you can use 15 drops in the morning, 15 drops at tea time, and 30 drops before you go to bed. And that will then carry you through the whole 24 hours very strongly. Whereas with the tablet, you have to kind of more or less decide, am I going to take it in the morning and get most effect during the day? Or is it the night sweats that are bothering me and I'm going to take it with my dinner and have the night time be when the strongest effect is? So if you take you're using the drops, 15 morning, 15 tea time, 30 before bed, and that gives you that whole 24-hour coverage. So that's quite a nice option as well. So there are obviously loads and loads of other potential symptoms rather than the hot flashes and night sweats, but I would like to point out that none of them are obligatory. There's about 20% of women who just coast through their menopausal transition without any problems at all, but you don't tend to hear from them. It's not a noisy demographic because they're not having a problem. We do sometimes get women who come, it's quite sweet, they'll come and say, well, I'm menopausal, I know, because my periods have gone, but I haven't got any problems. What's wrong with me? They're actually really worried, but it's fine. It's perfectly acceptable not to have issues in your menopausal years. But if you look at the distribution of the receptor sites for estrogen, particularly around the female body, you will realize why the symptoms can be very diverse. But it also means that if you give women a nice natural source or extra boost of estrogen, you can make a difference across a really wide range of symptoms. Okay, so supporting estrogen levels can be very, very productive in terms of symptom reduction across a whole range. One thing just to flag here is you don't want to boost the estrogen levels of a woman who's already having heavier or more frequent bleeds, okay, because she will tend to be estrogen dominant already, and you don't want to boost estrogen. Again, maybe, I hope this has changed, but we used to get a lot of women who had been put onto HRT because it was the only thing the doctor knew how to do, just give them HRT and not looking at the formulation of the HRT. So basically flinging more estrogen at them, and that's really horrible, and you get some really disastrous bleeds.
Alison, may I ask you again, HRT? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
Oh, hormonal replacement therapy. So
Okay.
that's the doctor's drug medication for menopausal women. It's
okay.
Pretty much all they've got. They'll give you HRT or antidepressants.
Okay.
That's their range, really.
That is shocking.
Oh, don't get me started. I had the worst one ever was a woman who was 10 years past the menopause. She'd sailed through her menopause, no problem at all. 10 years on, mum died, bereaved, as I'd understand, went to the doctor because she wasn't coping with the bereavement, and he put her on HRT for bereavement, just because she was within 10 years of what might look like a menopausal age. And by the time she came to me, he'd then taken her off it later because there was a scare about cancer, taken her off it cold turkey, and she was going through absolute hell. So yeah,
it's crazy. A friend of mine, her daughter, who is 20, she was having various problems with her period, but she was at university, she was really stressed, she'd just started uni, and went to the doctors, and after a while the doctor said, oh, I think it might be early menopause. And it was like, and she came to me saying, like, I really don't know what to do, like, I was like, I really don't think she has. And then obviously got a second opinion. It was like, no, it's almost as though, and I think that's the danger with menopause, has become a bit of a buzzword now, and it's gone from one extreme to the other. It's gone from that kind of really not being recognized at all, to now almost, I don't know whether doctors are worried that they're going to miss it, because we get a lot of people now who will come in here at 30s saying, I think I'm early menopause. And then again, you have to go through that whole thing and say, well, actually, what's happening with you? What's happening in life? What's your diet like? And often it's, we look at things like magnesium, we look at B vitamins, we look at all of those things, we look at, are you getting enough protein? And strangely, they're not perimenopausal at all. But yeah, it was just quite shocking. And then before the sort of HRT became more popular, my friends sort of in the age of perimenopause just went through a phase, and I'd meet up with them in the evening, and they were all just going, "Oh, my doctor's put me on antidepressants. Yeah, it's brilliant." And then the next one's going, "Oh, I'll get some antidepressants as well." And I'm like, please don't. But now they've all gone to HRT instead, so they seem happy. They don't listen to me at all, so I say nothing.
It's such a shame, because I mean, I had a client once who was told she was menopausal. She was only early 42, I think she was. Oh, you're menopausal, that's it, it's all over, we need to put you on H2, whatever. And she wanted children, bless her. And so she kept, and she had a terrible diet, an appalling lifestyle. She didn't get enough sleep, the whole lot. We changed her lifestyle and her diet, and she's got 2 children naturally.
I know, it is frightening sometimes, because that side of it is just totally not recognised. So
we just have to hang on to what wonderful changes that can be wrought with the sensible, practical, really quite simple stuff that we can help people with.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The great thing about the plant-based estrogens, as distinct from HRT, is they are really gentle. They're not going to give you dramatic effects immediately, necessarily, although some women do benefit very quickly, but they are gentle. So I like to think of them as stroking the estrogen receptors instead of hammering them, and they can actually also protect the estrogen receptor from exogenous estrogen, so from plastics and things like that. So they really don't seem to cause any problems, and they are easy as well to come off once symptoms have resolved, because no woman I've ever come across, and bear in mind I've been doing this for 35 years, I have never yet met a woman who was told by their doctor or gynecologist or whatever that when they come off their HRT they're going to get their symptoms back. That is never discussed. And now what they're saying is, well, you can stay on HRT for the rest of your life, so it's not an issue, which just anyway, moving on. So that they really don't have these problems. On the whole, they are really a lot safer than the drug medication. So there's some lovely research which you can access, or I can send to you, by the EFSA, who looked at 5 years of continual use of actually quite a high dose of soy isoflavones, 150 milligrams, and found that there was no increase of breast cancer risk or causing breast tissue changes. So that's very reassuring, I think, for customers. Didn't affect the uterus over 30 months use either. And then the thyroid hormones weren't affected either. And that's important because people who've got thyroid disorders are often cautioned, rightly, about eating excessive amounts of unfermented soy foods. So if you're taking fermented soy isoflavones, then that's really not going to be an issue. So that's the amount that they were looking at, 150 milligrams every day, is triple the amount in our menopause support formula, and that wasn't associated with increased risk. However, having said that, we still would always advise women who are in remission from or who have or are at risk of estrogen sensitive cancers or other cancers to talk to their doctor or their gynecologist or oncologist before they use any herbal remedy or nutritional supplement. It's, that's something that really is their healthcare professionals call, but it's just good to know that background research is there. So 50 milligrams a day of fermented isoflavones, gentle, not associated with side effects, but does have an awful lot of what we would call side benefits. It's really easy to take one tablet with breakfast and one with dinner. And you can use this, you can pair it up with sage or other remedies. The only thing that I wouldn't pair it up with is something that was going to boost your progesterone, because this is supporting your estrogen to resolve symptoms that are due to low estrogen. So you don't want them to push up your progesterone as well, because then you'll go back to that whole marina coil HRT scenario. So as long as it's not a progesterone boosting thing like Magnus Castus, for example, then it's absolutely fine. It pairs nicely with other things. You can use it long term. if need be, if you feel that your symptoms come back when you come off it after a while, then yeah, no problem with that. And the only thing that it would be contraindicated with would be hormonal contraceptives, because like anything hormonal, it does have a hormonal action, and you definitely don't want hormonal contraceptives to be thrown out of kilter. You can sit it alongside HRT. However, I feel that there's an illogicality about that, because I think if someone is in your shop, and you'll all have had people doing this, they come in and they say, well, I'm taking this, whatever it is, whether it's HRT or a antidepressant or a anti-anxiety medication, I'm taking that, but I want to take something else. And I always think, well, clearly your medication isn't working for you then, because otherwise you wouldn't be in here asking for something else. So it's better to go back to your doctor and talk about to them about the fact that your medication's not working, rather than pile loads of other things on top of it. That seems just a logical way to tackle that. So yeah, so I would just flag that as well. So you've got the isoflavones that are supporting your estrogen levels very gently, and yeah, loads of things that can potentially resolve from this. Joint and muscle aches and pains, which are really common actually in perimenopause as well as later on. Dryness, all kinds of dryness, because again, dryness can manifest all over, scalp, skin, eyes, just everything. Low mood and mood swings, and anxiety is a particularly common one. When your estrogen levels start to drop, you can experience anxiety, which is very unnerving because it's causeless. It's not necessarily, oh, I'm worried that I don't know, I'm going to have a car crash. It's something you just feel worried for no potential threat looming. You don't know why you're feeling anxious. It can be very unnerving. So it can help with that. Low libido potentially, although there can be other factors involved in lots of these symptoms. Sluggish digestion, which is an interesting one, because you wouldn't necessarily associate that with a hormonal issue, but when your estrogen levels drop, your gut, which contains estrogen receptors, can actually become a little bit more sluggish, which is often why you'll then get bloating and foods don't agree with you that used to agree with you, and fatigue, and then the poor memory and concentration as well. But bear in mind that supporting the estrogen will often help with the hot flushes and night sweats as well. So that can be why it's helping with those things also, or the things that come from poor sleep. And then the magnesium, which I think we all know is just the most magnificent mineral ever, and most women do seem to need it. I very rarely have a midlife female client who doesn't need magnesium, because it's been used up with physical exertion, but also with mental and emotional stresses, and it's only available in healthy food. Magnesium, if you look at the food sources of magnesium, none of them are junk foods at all, whereas calcium, you can still get your calcium even if you're eating sort of, I don't know, Maltesers and hula hoops. There's a certain degree of calcium in quite a lot of junky foods, but magnesium, nah, you need your healthy foods. And obviously healthy foods aren't what most women are going to pick, or people at all are going to pick when they're stressed and unhappy. So on that note, let's have a look at some of I'll just quickly have a little run through some of the additional advice that we've found has made the most impact for menopausal women. So the easy wins, low hurdle easy wins that are going to support your customers. Hydration, back to hydration, always coming back to hydration. So research has shown that there are obviously certain parts of the brain that release dopamine, because that gives a pleasurable feedback to other parts of the brain. It's released during sex, or can be released during sex, for example, or when a person eats something that they like, and particularly foods that are sweet or fatty. So that's behind a lot of cravings and behaviors. But there was this 2022 study, so interesting. They found that another part of the brain releases dopamine when the brain is hydrated. Okay, so if you're properly hydrated, then you're already getting that pleasurable feedback, and you may not need that tub of biscuits or whatever it is else it is that you're heading towards. So we also know that even minor dehydration causes fatigue, problems with concentration and brain fog, and I've got a ton of research on this, so if you're interested, just let me know. And so it's alison@avogel.co.uk if you just want to shoot over any questions afterwards, or want some of the research. But there's absolutely stacks of research on the problems that even minor dehydration will cause, really low percentage of dehydration, then fatigue, concentration, brain fog. It's so simple to rectify, or just even to improve. And I get so much positive feedback in my clinic from this, as well as working with A Vogel, with the menopausal women there, in terms of lifestyle changes.
Yeah, and I think, Alison, sometimes it's easy to forget kind of the basics. You know, we're looking for that kind of one thing that's more complex, but actually, just drinking more water. That was one of the first things I learned, actually, when I started doing my nutrition qualifications. The lecturer then said, right, anything else you learn over the next 3 years, just remember, tell people to drink more water. And I think very relevant when it comes to menopause as well, because what sometimes people kind of give feedback is they don't cope as well anymore with alcohol, and there is that tendency when people are stressed, they go and have a glass of wine, and actually that kind of feeling just worse and the low mood the next day, and partly some of that could well be to do with dehydration. So I think the lesson is, if they want to stick with their wine, drink a lot of water with it, I would say.
Absolutely. Oh, and you've just beautifully, thank you, introduced my next point, which was going to be, and this is a tricky subject to bring up with customers, but alcohol consumption rocketed during lockdown, and it hasn't reset to previous levels. I don't know if you've seen any of the stats, but it's still a lot higher than it was. And we weren't particularly, well, I live in Scotland, we're not particularly low on the level of alcohol consumption to start with, you know, so now it's really quite scary. And I'll tell you a little story here. I was recently handed a bottle of Prosecco by one of my sister-in-laws at 10:30 in the morning. And while she was telling me about how tired and brain fogged she was, and how she thought this was long COVID or the menopause, and I was thinking, I think it's long hangover that we've got here to tackle. You know, but she is functional, and she really doesn't consider that her alcohol intake is a problem. So, you know, it really is, because you just look at some of the research, even moderate consumption is having an effect on brain function. And it, you know, not to be a massive killjoy, but as you're saying, you know, at this point in your life, if you're not tolerating it as well, can you afford to put this extra stress on your body, bearing in mind that the liver has to do a lot of processing of hormones, sex hormones as well. So the less energy your liver has to deal with the other things, because it's dealing with alcohol, then the worse you're going to feel. Also, and this is a really interesting one, that when you stop drinking, then you're less likely to get heart arrhythmia, so palpitations basically, or erratic heartbeat. And palpitations are a really common menopause symptom. Obviously, they're often connected to dehydration, because dehydration will give you palpitations as well. And also salt intake, so cutting back on your salt if you're starting to get heart flutters, but definitely addressing alcohol. And it's one of those difficult things, because it's often there in people's daily routine, because they feel stressed or they're not sleeping well, and they take it because they think it calms them down and it helps them sleep, but it actually doesn't do either. In fact, it makes both worse. And, you know, as we saw before, you know, sleep and stress issues do affect lots of other things, like weight, for example, which is something that a lot of menopausal women are concerned about. So both stress and sleep deprivation will drive food cravings and weight gain. And I mean, you can have these slides afterwards and have a look at them, but there's a horrible kind of vicious circle whereby stress and sleep deprivation will drive cravings and weight gain. So getting an extra, this is a really simple stat to encourage people to sleep better. An extra 1.5 hours of sleep per night will get you a pound of weight loss in 2 weeks with no other intervention, so not changing your diet at all. So a pound weight loss in 2 weeks just by sleeping a bit more. And I think you only need 16 minutes of extra sleep to improve your brain function. So that's, yeah, there we go.
Alison, is there any statistics on, sorry, I've snuck to the end of the shop because we've got clients in, so that's why my head looks very close to the screen. Is there anything with regards to kind of like the optimum amount of sleep? What's that kind of perfect balance? So if we're adding on an hour and a half, are we adding on an hour and a half to something? Or
I think if you're not feeling well, then add on, an extra hour, see how you go. Then you may feel, what I find is that once people can get into a better sleep routine, their body tells them how much they need. Yeah. I don't need as much as my partner, he needs like 13 hours a day as far as I can see, whereas I can function absolutely fine on 6 or 7. But everybody's got their own, but it's a very bad idea to assume that you are one of the people that can manage on 4 or 5 hours, because nobody can actually. Nobody can. They may fool themselves that they can, but it's being very closely tied now to dementia in later life, having short sleep. So one thing I would say though, which is maybe easier than trying to say this many hours, because that people can get hung up on that, is try to make your sleep time earlier. That's a much easier thing to kind of grasp. Well, it's not necessarily easier to do, but it's an easier thing to grasp in terms of, if you can get more sleep earlier in the night, then it allows so many things to work better during the night when you're supposed to be doing all your repair and restoration work, your immune function and all the different things that happen during the night. So just trying to get an earlier, and this is an interesting thing for menopausal women, and I'm sure lots of your customers can relate to this, that midlife women who tend to be phenomenally busy will often stay up late just to get some time to themselves, because the rest of the time there's everyone clamoring, crawling around their ankles, me, and they don't get time just to have a bit of hush and peace, so they stay up late once everyone else has gone to bed. And so just making them realize how important it is to claw out some me time earlier.
I definitely would agree with that. I'm definitely an evening potterer, and then as soon as everyone's gone quiet, I'm like, right, I'm not going to bed now. This is actually, I'm quite calm now. And the other thing that comes up as well with sort of women in this age as well is the kind of trade-off and the balance between exercise as well, because time can be short. So sometimes women are choosing to get up earlier to fit in doing some exercise before work or something like that, and it's kind of, is that a good thing, or is it actually the extra sleep is probably better? And I guess
and one thing that I think is really important as you come into perimenopause is to recognize that the same kind of exercise won't necessarily be great for you. So anything that's heavy and pounding on the joints is not going to be helpful. So I suggest more sort of stretching and gentle exercise. And the most important thing is to know that it's the consistency that's important, not the intensity, so you can do, if you do 10 minutes walk a day, but it's every day, then that's better than trying to hit the gym once a week and destroying your joints. So
and I think sometimes, like, I try and tell people a lot, because sometimes it's quite typical of clients to say, I go to the gym 2-3 times a week, but they drive to the gym, they do like quite a heavy session, they drive home, and then they sit all day. And actually, would it have been more productive to have done some stretches at home, but learn to walk more in day-to-day life, and obviously try and then kind of balance the cortisol response as well?
I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. It's just checking these things over. And just lastly, just because I know time is precious, I just like this one. again, something nice and easy, and you'll all have things in your shops that you can help women with in terms of improving their fibre intake. So perimenopausal women often do experience low mood as their estrogen levels drop. So if they've got good gut function with lots of lovely dietary fibre, then that's going to help them. And I joined this up with some other research, which I thought was great, because obviously prunes would be a lovely source of fibre, but they're also good for bones, and they're full of magnesium, B6, iron, calcium, so yummy. And I thought, yeah, it behoves a nutritional practitioner to end up on something yummy to eat. So there you go. You know, this is such a fascinating topic. We can, you know, I can rattle on about this forever.
Yeah, definitely. No, it is. And it's really nice to, so yeah, thank you for all that, because it's really nice to kind of check in, be reminded of some things, but also things like the safety of things and understanding. That's where we always need to just make sure that we're understanding what we're recommending. And I think, as I said before, I think anyone who's on this session or watching it on video, it's really good to share it with the teams as well, so that we know we've got some kind of safe remedies and how to use them. Does anybody have any questions? I'll see what I've got. I've got loads of things written down, but I might have to send you those separately. Just one thing, which was going back a little bit to what we said before with regards to, we were talking about the coil. One of the things I get as well is a lot of women coming in who say, well, I'm on the pill, so I don't really know whether I'm menopausal. How does that kind of work? What does the body do in those circumstances?
It's an absolute, it's dement. It really is, because like I say, you can have someone in their 20s who's been on a progesterone only contraceptive for, you know, a good few years, and their periods have got further and further apart, or completely stopped, you know, and, you know, at that stage they're not ovulating. So that looks very much like menopause. It's not menopause, because you know, you can usually rectify it, but it looks jolly like it. And if that's also present in a time when a woman would normally be expecting to be perimenopausal, so maybe, you know, in mid-40s, then you've got absolutely no way of knowing what's going on. And to be honest, neither does the body. It's very confused, because you know, it's getting very strong signals from medication. And
yeah, and I'm not sure, I may be speaking a bit out of turn here. I'm not always sure whether the GPs are kind of entirely sure what they're doing in those scenarios, because they've got someone who's been on the pill until they're like late 40s, and then there seems to be a different answer to everybody. So some people will then get switched straight onto HRT. Other times they're told, and I've had women in here really like late into their 50s, and they're still taking the pill, and they just kind of like, and they are different kind of estrogen, as I understand it, or different strengths. I'm not quite sure. It's not the same preparation anyway, as I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's completely baffling. And that they've now sort of, you've got the body identical HRT, which to be honest is you know, supposedly a bit less harsh than previous types, but you're still giving the body messages that you know, confuse what's actually going on. It can be a godsend, you know, for a woman who's really struggling. You know, there's a place for these things, but they have to be managed. And the one really important thing that I think is we all need to know is, if they're coming off their HRT, is to do it slowly. Take as long as you possibly can, because the worst things that we ever see are the women who've been taken off HRT cold turkey, you know, and so they've got artificially high levels of sex hormones, and then they go from that to sort of practically nothing overnight. It's like falling off the edge of a cliff. It's appalling. And there's really very little that you can do naturally to support that. Sometimes acupuncture will help, but you know, it's not.
But you're right in terms of people are just not really told that at the time. And you know, there's potential reasons why at the time of menopause, there's so much stuff often going on in life, and maybe a slight delay for some people isn't a bad thing, but they should be given the information to say, well, actually, that's kind of what it is doing. It's delaying things. But I guess we could talk about that for a long time. So I mean, we are exactly 7 o'clock now, so if there's any more questions, do shout up. You can actually I think, if I can get this working, I should have said before, actually, you could type notes in the chat as well, but can I just pop down, I'll pop down in this chat, Ali, what's your email address? What's your email address?
Oh, Alison with one L, alison@avogel.co.uk.
So,
and there was Angie had put in the chat box all about sage with a history of breast cancer, and as I say, it's non-estrogen, so menopause is fine with that, but we do always say to check with your oncologist. We have quite a lot of doctors that do use and cancer nurses who will recommend and use menopause. So they don't seem to be worried about that. But if someone's in that situation where they've got breast cancer, that's out of your hands. Their oncologist is in charge of that. So you can provide the patient information leaflet, or we can give you extra copies of those if you want. And Justina, we've got Joe's got the slides, Justina, so she can email them over.
Yeah, we'll sort that through. I've just realized, actually, because it says recording, not everybody can see. You're the only one who can see the notes at the moment. It won't
okay.
the questions, apparently. But yeah, we can definitely send out the presentation as well. So I'll sort that out with Avril. So what we'll do, we'll send out your email address, but all of us on the call will also have contacts within Vogel as well, so we can ask questions that way as well. So but yeah, that's been really, really helpful. I'll just quick note on the next shop talk. So we're going to take a break now until September, because everybody will, I don't think anybody would join us at the next one in 2 months' time, because we'll all be hopefully having some sunny holidays and having a bit of downtime. So it will be round about the 14th of September, just finalising who the speaker is for that. So that's a note on Shop Talk. I think I have covered all my notes, I believe. Probably will remember some afterwards that I didn't, but I think I've got it. I've not got Vicky here to prompt me, see, because when Vicky's here, I forget something and she says it, or I can remember. But the main thing is that I press record, so I'm okay. So thank you so much, Alison, and thank you everybody for joining us. And have a lovely summer, everybody. Enjoy the sunshine and not too much wine. But lots of water, not too much wine,
Lots of water.
Lots of water.
Bye.
Yeah.